I would like to ask IPP readily to introduce our distinguished speaker. Ready, please. Ready, please unmute yourself.
Okay. President Cheong Nai Cheong and my fellow Rotarians, I think all of us here probably know Dr. Shan better than I do, but anyway, I will just see what I can do to introduce him. From what I gather, Dr. Shan is currently the Senior Consultant Surgeon and Head of Surgical Services at Rotary Specialist Hospital. He is also Associate Professor at Monash Clinical School in the JB campus, as well as Associate Professor at the KBJ Postgraduate University in Mumbai. Dr. Shan graduated with an MBBS degree from Madras University in 1970, and subsequently he was also awarded Fellow of the Royal College of Surgery in Edinburgh, Ireland, and FICS of USA. Altogether, Dr. Shan has 50 years of medical experience, and he also told me that he has been a Rotary Club of Johor Bahru member for 33 years and also a Freemason for 30 years. That's why he said the left leg is slipshod. Besides all this, Dr. Shan is also, I would say, a history and travel encyclopedia. He can give you a talk on anything on travel or any other subject if you so choose and call upon him to do so. So, fellow Rotarians and friends, I present to you Associate Professor Dr. Shan, who will share with us his keen knowledge on Polio-Plus today. Professor Dr. Shan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, IPP Freddie Lee, for those kind words. And President Cheong Nai Cheong, PDGs, and my fellow Rotarians. Now, when President CNC said, why call me a Mr., don't forget, Mr. Razak is also here. He's also a Mr. Because we too belong to the August College of the Royal College of Surgeons. When you're conferred Mr. instead of Doctor, which is supposed to be higher than a doctor. Anyway, I can explain to you in detail some other time and why surgeons are called Misters, especially if they're from the Royal College of Surgeons. Anyhow, coming to today's topic, let me ask the President. It's quite a long talk. It's going to be about 45 minutes because I have culled everything we need over the past years from 1985, ever since Polio-Plus was started. Now, if you want me to give the full show, I'll take about 45 minutes. If you want, I can give a half show today and continue another day. What do you want?
I think we can do the full shot today.
Okay, then I'll share my slides. 1 minute, there's interruption from the hospital. Just 1 minute, please. Hello. Yes. Come in.
Welcome from Sabah. I see Philip Chong, PDG. Oh, apa khabar?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Yeah.
Hello, Philip.
Hi.
Hello, Philip.
John, how are you?
Everything all right, Philip?
Hi, Philip.
How are you?
PDG Philip.
Hi, Rotary Poly. Yes. Good to see you all.
Hi, our DG is here.
Hi, Dolly.
How is everyone?
Hello, Dolly.
Hi,
DG Dolly.
Hello.
Welcome,
Hi. Good evening, everyone.
President CNC.
Hello.
Hello.
And also PDG Philip. Thank you for coming.
Hello, PDG Philip.
Let me share my slide.
DG, Dolly, how are you?
Right, good. Hi, President.
Everybody,
To
So you
just
start climbing the Mount Kinabalu already. You got virtual background of Mount Kinabalu.
next
Yes.
April. Next
This
April.
way.
Virtually, you're climbing now.
Hello, Joe, can you mute all the others?
Right, can you all see my screen?
Beautiful, Sean. Yes.
Yes,
Right,
Dr. Sean.
thank you. Right, Rotary Polio-PLUS, as we call it today, or since 1985, was a project that was auspiciously done by our Rotary International organization. Now, going further, you'll find that Rotary Polio-PLUS since 1985 is well depicted on the grounds outside one Rotary Center, which I mentioned some time ago in another lecture. It is a wonderful sculpture. It captures the poignancy of the noble effort of Polio-PLUS itself. Now, this is the plug on the outside of one Rotary Center in Evanston. It is a gift of Rotary to the children of the world, wonderfully and fittingly done on the wall. And the write-up is essentially Polio-PLUS is to free world from poliomyelitis, or rather free the world of poliomyelitis, a disease feared for centuries. In 1985. The Rotary Foundation of Rotary International mounted two efforts. One, a fundraising campaign to provide large quantities of vaccine, and two, an immunization program to deliver the vaccine to children around the world. Both very noble efforts achieved unparalleled success. The campaign raised twice the initial goal of US 120 million. I'll tell you, this was beaten hollow. And the immunization effort brought praise and support from health authorities worldwide. This statue symbolizes the commitment of countless Rotarians like you and I, who are making their vision a reality and the world a healthier place for millions of children. And this plug is exactly on the grounds of the One Rotary Center. And there you see that particular statue, or rather sculpture that I mentioned. It is a very fitting statue of a person. He may be a health worker, he may be the father, he may be a doctor. Giving that child in his arms a little drop of the Sabin vaccine, or the oral polio vaccine, which is so poignant and so touching rather, and with two children looking on to say that we can conquer polio. Right, if ever you go to Evanston, don't ever miss this in front of the building. And the World Polio Day, as President CNC rightly mentioned, was actually 2 days ago. That was on the 24th of October. And generally, October month is considered the Polio-PLUS, or rather polio awareness month. So the October month is generally the awareness month for polio. Right. And therefore, our mission is to end polio. How close are we? In 1985, Rotary International launched what is called the Polio-PLUS, as I mentioned earlier, and the first and the largest internationally coordinated private sector support of a public health initiative. Initial pledge of only US 120 million. Then came the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, is an initiative created in 1988. Imagine 3 years later, and I know PDG John Chair has a bone of contention with this Global Polio Eradication Initiative. They started 3 years later, just after the World Health Assembly resolved to eradicate the disease poliomyelitis, and it was led by the World Health Organization and also five more organizations I'll be telling you in a short while. It is the largest international public health initiative in history and in the world. Now, the global organization, I said, is a public-private partnership led by national governments with 6 partners. The World Health Organization, that you can see on the left, the logos, Rotary International, which is ours, the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, and of course, Bill and Melinda Gates came in a bit later, their foundation, and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance that came and joined this union of 6 partners to eradicate polio And the aim and the goal was to, as I said, eradicate polio worldwide. Now, the center that I mentioned is the Polio Eradication Initiative. And who are we? I've just mentioned. And who are the core partners? I've already mentioned. Now, POLio-PLUS. In 1988, Rotarians donated US $247 million, more than the initial 120 million that was aimed for. And what a nice surprise that we could make so much of money to help eradicate polio. And then the World Health Assembly emboldened resolves to eradicate polio by year 2000. Take note, year 2000, we were supposed to eradicate polio, partnered by RI, UNICEF and US Centers for Disease Control. Right. In 1994, the whole of the Western Hemisphere was declared polio-free. In 1995, China and India went on a massive campaign to immunize 165 million children in a single week. Very noble effort that these two large countries did. And in 1996, 150 nations were declared polio-free. In the year 2000, the target year came and went. Western Pacific declared itself polio-free, and polio was still not free, or the world was not free of polio. In the year 2002, the European region declared itself polio-free, and 2004, synchronized national immunization days, or NIDs, in West and Central Africa in 23 countries target 80 million children, all noble efforts. And the target year 2005 came and went, but still polio was not eradicated. Was it something to cry over? Was it a failure of RI or the world bodies? Literally no, because there were other factors involved. RI with the rest of the world bodies achieved a feat, but target year 2005 for total eradication saw the incidence of polio endemic countries at its lowest in only 4 countries in 2006. Now, what are these 4 countries we're talking about? So this in itself is a great achievement, if you were to say. Right, and the endemic countries were highlighted here. These are the hotspots, as I can say. But in a nutshell, if you say pain countries, they are Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, and Nigeria. I put India within brackets, but meaning just to say that these were called the pain countries. They were literally a pain. Now, India dropped off in 2014, and therefore it now leaves only 10. That is Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Nigeria. And lately, even Nigeria has dropped. Therefore, it is PA. I'll come to that in a short while. In India, there are plenty of pockets of infection towards the northern part of India, actually. And however, in 2014, India was officially declared polio-free, a marvelous effort by people going from villages to villages, putting that little drop, the Sabin drop, into the mouths of babies and children and immunizing all of them. Such a noble effort that the volunteers did for the whole of India. Local taboos on vaccine was another thing that played hard on the minds of people of certain countries and certain taboos and their religions. Kano in Nigeria, the vaccine was supposed to cause male infertility. And they said this is a Western ploy to decimate the population of, let me put it in brackets, the Muslims. So the Muslims especially had this fear that the Western ploy was to decimate the male population of the Muslim people and therefore reduce the population, which is hardly the truth. It is definitely not. Certain religious groups, again, did not allow vaccination. In fact, certain religious groups in Afghanistan and Pakistan killed our volunteers. Many of them died. They are real brave people who went into these areas. Nigeria, classified by the International Health Regulations IHR as a state of infected with CVDPV2, means today Nigeria has a resurgence of polio, but these are the vaccine derived polio. That means not direct polio itself. That means those who are vaccinated, especially the Savin vaccine, they develop a bit of polio. And this is really not the actual wild polio that we are talking about. So again, Nigeria is now free of polio. And we in Malaysia had a scare at one time in Kelantan. There was an ultra-religious group that was reluctant to vaccinate. They went and lived near a river in the most primitive forms and styles, building huts and patches and things like that, living off the river and the fish and whatever they had. And they alarmed the world, and especially Malaysia, with the resurgence of polio. Anyway, that's been taken care of by the government, and we are safe again. Why polio? Polio is the only common disease which results in the sudden paralysis of a previously healthy child, also called infantile paralysis. A crippling and potentially fatal infectious disease, polio still strikes here and strikes children under the age of 5, mainly in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. It causes paralysis within hours and is most often irreversible. Polio can cause death sometimes, mainly by suppression of breathing. No cure, hence prevention is the best protection for as little as Ringgit Malaysia, 1 ringgit 80 cents worth of vaccine. Historically, therefore, polio has been the world's greatest cause of disability among the children, and that leads to those survivors into adulthood and those who walk with crutches, etc. What is poliomyelitis? In medical terms, polio plus mylon. Now, polio means pale, literally. Mylon refers to the spinal column, literally the nervous system of the spinal column, and myelin sheath is the one that covers those nerves. And this particular virus, which is an oral-fecal transmission, that means it is from your feces to your mouth. How? When your food gets infected with feces of a person with polio, you get poliomyelitis. And that's how, oral-fecal. That means from the mouth to the feces, feces to the mouth. So polio means pale, mylon represents the spinal column, and this agent actually acts on the spinal column and causes paralysis by destroying those nerves. Poliomyelitis was first recognized as a disease by Jakob Hein in 1840. The polio virus was identified in 1908 by Karl Landsteiner. It is an enterovirus, that means a virus that lives in the stomach, not like the coronavirus, which lives in the respiratory tract. So it's an enterovirus or an RNA virus that spreads by the oral fecal route, as I mentioned. It becomes paralytic disease when it affects the nerves of the particular areas. And that picture there is a picture of the polio virus. It is almost like rounded objects in a glass dish. Right. Outcomes, proportion of cases, asymptomatic 90 to 95, minor illness 4 to 8, non-paralytic 1 to 2%, paralytic poliomyelitis, although it appears low, 0.5 to 0.5%, out of which spinal polio is 79%, which leads to weakness of your lower limbs, bulbospinal, which leads to weakness of your whole body below the neck, and bulbar in the neck part alone. That's 2% only. These are the various types of paralysis that you can get: spinal, bulbospinal, and bulbar poliomyelitis. Symptoms basically are as like any other viral fever: very high fever like your corona, headaches, yes, stiffness in the neck and the back, asymmetrical weakness, that means you feel one side being weak compared to the other side. There is difficulty swallowing because the nerves to the gullet or your esophagus is compromised. And then you have pins and needles in the extremities. You have paralysis, starts 1 to 10 days after the early symptoms above. So these are the symptoms of poliomyelitis. It can be any other viral disease too. So the paralytic polio, as I said, is 3 types, mainly spinal, which affects the lower half of the body. Bulbospinal affects the brain part of it, And the bulbous spinal is the one in the lower part of this diagram on your right-hand side. Follow my cursor. And the bulba is on top. And most of the time, the bulba can kill. So poliomyelitis is not only a paralytic disease, it is a killer disease too. The muscles commonly weakened by polio, as you can see in the diagram, are the muscles that straighten or bend your hip, or spread your leg or cross your legs, muscles that straighten your knee, muscles that help to lift your foot, or the shoulder muscles, the back muscles, the thumb and your fingers, and contractures will occur in all those areas where the muscle is weakened or the nerves to the muscles are weakened by polio virus. Now, this is a polio child in Africa finding its way around with what was given by Rotary International, a little thing to play with and also to move forward. 1997. And polio children, crutches have been made especially for them by RI and also agents of RI to help them move with these crutches because they are paralyzed waist downwards, most of them, or they're paralyzed in one leg and still they are not very mobile. So crutches play a big part in these children. And you see school children, even with crutches, they can pray. There's a tiny tot in crutches and taught how to walk with what is called a walking frame. And then the iron lung. The iron lung became very prominent in the early 1900s. And in 1928, the first patient to use the iron lung was an 8-year-old girl suffering from respiratory paralysis as a result of poliomyelitis or polio. Though she later died from cardiac failure, the device, an artificial respirator, had kept her breathing and alive for over 5 days. Note, it's an iron steel cylinder and it makes your chest move in and out automatically without you having to breathe so that you can live. That means you can breathe the air by the help of this iron steel cylinder. Now, why does polio patients or why do polio patients need this? The patients who go into severe breathing difficulties and apnea or dyspnea and things like that, as we call it in medicine, are the cases that need to use the iron lungs. And iron lungs have saved a lot of people. Going forward, you'll find that the bays and bays of iron lungs in some countries in those days, in the early 20s, I mean, that's right, 1920s. And many of the children did survive as they grew up, and some sort of a nervous association took place to help the diaphragms of the lungs work, but many died too. And this is a BV of iron lungs for you to see, to show that how popular this iron lungs was in the olden days. We don't see this anymore because we have almost eradicated poliomyelitis. And this is a modern iron lung, very convenient. You can see through, you can go inside and breathe. You can also, they can change the position to make you eat and things like that. The history of polio. Basically, there's been sporadic incidences around the world, and polio actually predates recorded history. There is an Egyptian stele. A stele is like a pillar or a wood or stone or marble or whatever, on which words are written in the olden days, as in ancient times. And these particular ancient Egyptian stele dating back to 1580 to 1350 BC shows a young man with an atrophied leg. Atrophied means weakened or a leg that has become small. Polio was described with a degree of certainty by a British physician, Michael Underwood, in the late 1700s, and he referred to it as debility of the lower extremities. In 1840, Jacob Heinz monographed a description of the disease in one paper, described the disease very aptly. And this is the Egyptian stele that I'm talking about, where on rock it was shown an Egyptian man with one leg smaller than the other and the leg lifted up at the ankle to show that he definitely had poliomyelitis. This is way back 1580 BC or BCE, as we call it nowadays. So that's the polio leg. In the USA was recorded in Vermont in the summer of 1894. It's a massive, like a plague in Vermont in 1894. It was attributed to overeating, chilling, trauma, fatigue, typhoid, whooping cough, and pneumonia. None of this. None of this. So see how ignorant people were. And polio virus was discovered in 1908 by two Austrian physicians, basically Karl Landsteiner and E. Popper, who identified the virus. The disease became a reportable disease entity to all the doctors, and anybody who saw this case of polio has to report to the health organizations to keep a record. And in 1954, voila, breakthrough. A vaccine was developed, and this time it was Salk, Jonas Salk, who developed this vaccine that we call today as a Salk vaccine. Is an inactivated polio virus. That means the virus is not dead, but it's inactivated and is given by a subcutaneous injections to patients to create an immunity in our body, just like our coronavirus that we have now, your Pfizer and your other vaccines that we have, injectables. Right, so that was Jonas Salk. And he says, risks, I like to say, always pay off. You learn what to do or what not to do. And that was him. Brave man. He was born in New York City on the 28th of October 1914 of Russian Jewish immigrants. He studied medicine at New York University, studied influenza virus, and later, while working at the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, he saw a potential for vaccine for polio too. And that is Salk's family. That's him, Dr. Jonas at the back, his wife Donna, brother Herman, and on this side, Brother Lee, not Freddie Lee, and Mother Dora and Father Daniel. All right. And next is his family themselves, Jonas' family, in 1989 in La Jolla, California. They're having a sort of a picnic. And Jonas' Salk vaccine, June 1995, his last years was spent searching for AIDS vaccine. Before he died, he actually was trying to find a cure for or a vaccine for AIDS virus. But of course, he did not succeed. And he appeared on the Time magazine, very nicely pictured. And he also set up the institute called the Salk Institute in Los Angeles, Jolla, California. And you can see here our famous actor and singer, Elvis Presley, is being vaccinated. It's a big thing for the press. And what next? The next breakthrough. And the next breakthrough was the Sabin vaccine. Am I too fast, President? Am I too fast, anybody?
No, carry on. Carry on.
Right. So going to the next breakthrough, we have the Sabin vaccine, and the Sabin vaccine is discovered in 1961 by Dr. Albert Sabin, born in Poland of Jewish parents. See, both the discoverers were Jews. Their family migrated to America, and Sabin made what is known as the killed vaccine or a killed virus. The other was attenuated virus, which means that it was not killed totally. The Sabin vaccine was killed viruses. All right, I'll come to the differences in a little while, but just to congratulate Dr. Sabin for an excellent sort of job done, because he created the oral vaccine. Oral means putting it into your mouth. Just one drop saves you from poliomyelitis. And the Sabin oral vaccine, it was ease of administration that was easy. That means just open the mouth of the baby, distract the baby, one drop in the mouth, and that's done. Next, it provided a longer lasting immunity than the Salk vaccine, the injectable, and soon overtake the Salk vaccine in terms of immunization. The only drawback with the Sabin oral vaccine was there was vaccine-associated polio, as I mentioned just now in Nigeria. 1 in 700,000 cases can develop full-blown poliomyelitis. That means the Sabin vaccine can have that 1 in 700,000 chance of developing polio in that unlucky baby or child. In 1979, it actually Rotary International joined up with the Philippines government to join forces to immunize 6 million children. And it is from this idea in 1979 that RI took on to say, let us now get rid of polio in the world. And therefore, you find that this combination that came to be known as Polio-PLUS. And Polio-PLUS is only our word, RI word. It doesn't belong to the other group, as I said. So let us be proud that Rotary International created this word Polio-PLUS, and it has survived till today. We're almost there. Polio partners around the world were people, anybody willing to help, anybody recruited, who walked on their feet to house or quarters to slums or whatever, or those who went on camels, animals, donkeys, horses or whatever. They were all volunteers. They risked their lives and limbs to go and put polio virus Sabin vaccine into the mouths of babies. We should salute all these people. These are what we call Rotary associates and partners. And campaigns like 2002 here, house-to-house national immunization. Let's kick polio out of Nigeria forever. Wonderful. Immunize all children below the age of 5 and so on and so forth. Advertisements all over the world, and polio has been brought down to its knees. And RI's effort in Angola, this doctor is checking this poor baby's, child's reflexes to see whether he's got paralysis from poliomyelitis. And of course, in parts like Nigeria, the clergy, the Buddhists, or rather the Muslims, and also the Catholic priests and clergy helped in the campaign against Nigeria. And this is wonderful that all religions can come together and do such a thing for humanity. In Bogota, whole classrooms were actually immunized, and the Rotary Clubs of New London, Connecticut, USA, and Bogota teamed up to assist the school, which is located in one of Bogota's poorest areas, that is the Colegio Dios Es Amor in Bogota. Then Glenn Kinross, our RI president, 1997-98, you can see him helps to kick polio out of Africa. A noble deed indeed, RI president. And NID is National Immunization Day in Latin America, where people are gathered to take their children to go and get immunized. And in Bangladesh, a picture to show you a Rotary shelter for homeless, where the immunization takes place. A house becomes a person, a human being. And poster in India encourages parents to have their children vaccinated during National Immunization Days in India. And in Turkey, this is a funny situation. Nilek Minas, as they call him, the last indigenous polio case in Europe, was 33 months old when paralysis struck on 26 November 1998, despite eradication in the whole of Europe. And this was the only case in Turkey. He has never been vaccinated against polio. And this was one case that escaped the immunization. And in Africa, campaigns to immunize, simple, one drop. And the Salk vaccine I didn't mention earlier was in America. They formed lines like this to get their injections. Even people like Beyonce was a volunteer, and Polio-PLUS Foundation. Total contribution history, you find in the first few years from 87 to 1990, it was Polio-PLUS campaign. After that, the World Health Organization took over. And contributions-wise, from 1985 to 2001, Rotary did the maximum amount of contribution, if you can see the pie chart there. But this dropped later in 2002 and 2005, and the chunk of Rotary was a small slice of a pie, as they say, whereas the major part was taken up by the US CDC, and the funding gap of USA 275 million. Right. In the year 2002, and we used to have this polio news eradication or polio news from RI. And there you see issue number 14, and I mentioned about this boy who got poliomyelitis even after Europe and Turkey were all immunized. So these were polio news that we used to get in the olden days. And Kofi Annan, the Secretary General from January 1997 to December 2006, praised Rotary's polio program, and he said, "It's a shining example of what cooperation between governments, the United Nations, and NGOs can achieve." Kofi Annan. So ending polio worldwide was the move, and this is some posters that Rotary International came up with, like Rotary Humanity in Motion, and working for a polio-free world, and Rotarians can make it happen, and we will make it happen, as the logo went. And the polio tree is something that I mentioned to you, the fellow Rotarians. Chop this tree to make a crutch, eradicate polio. This is a tree that was never chopped down to make a crutch that was never needed by a child who never got polio because vaccine was never in short supply. That means thanks to the people whose compassion wasn't either do not chop this tree. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he developed polio at the age of 39. Rotarians in NID, you can see big guns also working hand in hand. Education, even in Shanxi province in China, and mark of vaccination to show that you have been vaccinated, that the finger has been marked with a dye. And of course, the Salk vaccine came up in a stamp in the USA. And of course, in the news, you had Salk's vaccine works, polio vaccine is safe, 55 vaccine will be even better, polio routed completely. And Sabin vaccine, or Sabin Sunday as they call it, 24th April, people line up to get the oral vaccine. And in the USA alone, polio virus vaccination, the inactivated vaccine IPV introduced, and later the oral, and you see the case per 100,000 dropped and dropped and dropped. And 1983, it became low. And today, of course, except for a few endemic areas, polio is almost eradicated. Vaccination China, and the top 20 giving countries, as I said, were USA, Japan, Korea, Germany, UK, Italy, and so on and so forth, including India, Australia, and France. And many people, many countries contributed. And the financial status of the campaign, therefore, through 2001, about US 1.8 billion exceeded to complete the battle. Another US 380 million was needed. 5 million people are walking without being afflicted since 1998. More than 500,000 cases are being prevented each year. Polio-Plus partners, as I probably mentioned earlier, these were the NIDs in India that involved vaccination booths, vaccinators, and so on and so forth. I shall not delve on this more, but a shot in Rotary's arm came when Bill Gates Foundation, they donated 100 million to RI to match the for dollar, which RI came with to match the 100 million. Right, campaigns and polio now, as we are trying to do again, the defeat of polio is now up to you. That is all of us to get it done. Anterior poliomielitis, if anybody gets polio despite vaccination, they were bound to be hauled up by the health department, and the health officer will sign onto this piece of paper. And R&D, of course, more and more work is being done to determine what else can be done for polio. And there was an effort called the March of the Dimes, Rotary's earlier efforts. And the March of the Dimes is the United States non-profit organization that worked to improve the health of mothers and babies. And the organization was founded by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1938 as the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis to combat polio. The name March of the Dimes was coined by Eddie Cantor, another funding Jonas Salk polio vaccine. The organization expanded the focus to the prevention of birth defects and infant mortality. Right. Going on, you found that there were logos like these: join the March of Dimes, meaning to say get rid or try to get rid of polio. This is way back in 1938. Right. The Rotary drop that saves. And an OPV poster that says Welby says, be well, take oral polio vaccine, tastes good, works fast, prevent polio, ease of delivery. So we should now say goodbye to polio. Thanks to polio, but still there's little pockets in Afghanistan, there's resistance from some social groups in some parts of even Pakistan, whereas most of the world is rid of polio. We are that close to getting rid of polio, that is jointly get rid of polio. And Walk for Polio, I remember our PP Leong Chi Wo, it is around. He did us proud by walking from KL to Singapore, as they say, and also the Trans-Sabah Walk. The Trans-Sabah Walk from Jesselton Point for the sake of end polio, as they say. And there was also a walk in Mount Kinabalu. I have records of this. And of course, my references have been the Rotarian and polio newsletters, Rotary POLIO-PLUS program, Wikipedia. And of course, I must congratulate District Governor Dolly on being proactive and bringing out this polio, what we call polo, what we call shirt of jacket rather, and also the sale of the watch. Well done, DG, for the effort to promote end polio. And I think all of us should wear one such badge on your lapel pin, just as I have on mine, to say, let's end polio and carry this logo around. Thank you very much. Let's end polio now. Thank you for watching my show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, President.